history is that I started out as a work adjustment specialist at Morton County Rehab, and I worked there about a year and taught people how to kind of a job readiness model, and we would teach them how to measure and how to tie their shoes. I mean, a lot of kind of readiness to work activities. And then I was approached by Jim McLish, who was the director at the time, to be a coordinator of this supported employment grant for persons with emotional disabilities. At the time they called it psychiatric disabilities. And so I worked on that grant for 2 years. That was a learning experience for me because I had never worked in business before, and I'd had a social work degree, and so it also was kind of a learning process where I went out and talked to employers about hiring people, and I wasn't sure of the terminology at the time, so I was calling, using the lingo I had was psychiatrically impaired, and then they came back with mentally restored. And then I thought, I'm scaring these employers, so, I needed to learn more about how to approach. So I participated in what was called a SPANS. It was put on by the University of Illinois. It was a group of us that did job developing in Indiana, and we tried to learn about how to approach businesses. And so that's where I got my training, basically, in how to become more business-like. And when we first started out, I was a job coach, a job developer, and after going to this training, I became an employment consultant. And instead of placing people with disabilities in jobs, we actually helped employers to recruit people with disabilities. So the whole approach changed, and then I started kind of training staff and going to conferences and presenting about a new approach. And part of this new approach changed a little bit in 1990 when the Americans with Disabilities Act came about, and we could start using accommodations and using the lingo of that act, which said that you could restructure jobs. Even when I went to Stone Belt, they had a workshop, and people were getting paid piece rate and not really happy with the amount of money they were getting. It was far from the minimum wage at that time, and so they were wanting to find something, to be able to support themselves or to on their own. So this is when supported employment really, really grew. The unemployment rate at that time was 2% unemployment, 2 to 4% in the counties we were in, and which made it easier, I'd say, for doing job developing, because then when you talk to employers about restructuring and about accommodations and essential functions of the job, using the lingo of the Americans with Disabilities Act, they were listening because they were wanting to see how could they integrate their staff, and because they needed employees. And so we were doing, it was great. I mean, we were really placing people in jobs that they wanted to be in. And we became more creative. We would get together in a team with the person, and we would figure out, I think it was called paths at the time, and we'd look at, okay, where does this person live? Where do they, go to church? Where do they go to buy groceries? What is their community? And, what is it they want to do? What are their likes and dislikes, their hobbies? And we would really target what the person's interests were and what their preferences were, and then we'd try to find them a job in that field or in that area. And it was very successful at the time.